I am your host, Dr. Saran Nataki. Welcome to Power 365 Phenomenal Woman Wednesday. This podcast will address topics ranging from what is a phenomenal woman? Are you enough? Community service, paying it forward, the manifestation of dreams through words and action, the power in being a woman, fashion, and much more. Stay tuned.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal woman.
It's Phenomenal Woman Wednesday.
Welcome to episode 27. In this episode, I visit with Dr. Luciana Starks. Dr. Starks, or Chana as I warmly call her, gives us her definition of a phenomenal woman, discusses the role of her grandmother in her life, and we also explore how life prepared her for one of the most important decisions in her life, to move forward with the birth of her unborn baby boy despite the medical advice. Let's jump into the conversation with this phenomenal woman. Enjoy. Welcome back to Phenomenal Woman Wednesday. So today I have a very special guest, a very dear friend of mine, Dr. Luciana Starks. Dr. Starks is a communications executive. She's also a professional speaker, a leadership professor, and she also has an inspirational lifestyle blog. Dr. Starks is also a wife, a mother of three, a daughter, and a daughter-in-law. Welcome, Dr. Starks.
Hi, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you today on this platform and be able to share you with my listeners and have them benefit from all that you have to offer, like I do. So welcome again.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to call you, I know you're Dr. Starks, but I'm going to call you Chana.
No. Please.
This is we're going to be chit-chatting about quite a few things today, and we're very familiar, and this show is very approachable, and it's going to flow like more of a conversation between friends, because that's really what it is.
I love that.
Yeah. So the very first thing I want to ask you is, what does it mean to be a phenomenal woman? We're here on Phenomenal Woman Wednesday, and my listeners tune in to really hear what makes women phenomenal and how you define being a phenomenal woman. So what does it mean to you?
So I think a phenomenal woman is, someone who's persevered. I think that she's phenomenal not because of her perfection, but actually because of her imperfections and how she's overcome them. So that definition is pretty, it ranges for me to more than just a beauty. It's her intellect, it's her poise, it's her grace, and all of those things to me kind of represent a woman who's that.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're saying that she's not surface, right? So I love that it's someone that's not perfect. That she's imperfect and it's not surface. That's wonderful. And then, who would you say have been the phenomenal women in your life?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think my first example, the first person that comes to mind, honestly, would just have to be my grandmother. She's been that ultimate guide for me. And then I can think broadly. I can see my mother, my aunts, my church mothers, my sorors, my friends, my teachers. I just kind of think that I stand on their shoulders right now, and I feel like I represent just a tribe of women who poured into me very graciously and generously and fervently, and I was exposed really early by just a cadre of women who were often, bringing forth lessons and examples and encouragement. And it's kind of what I set out to do now for others, to be that same kind of light for them.
Mm-hmm. I love that. A common phenomenal woman that is in common with most of my guests is their mother. But not often have I heard a grandmother. And I think that's really interesting because especially in our culture, African American culture, um, grandmothers are really important for a lot of reasons. But can you tell me a little bit about why your grandmother, why did you name her first? Like what made her phenomenal to you?
Hmm. Well, I spent a lot of time with my grandmother growing
Mm-hmm.
up. My mother was a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
And so we spent time between, South LA and Compton. And my mom we were living in Compton, but we would drive in and I was going to school in LA across from my grandmother's house, the home, in fact, which my mother and uncles and folks were all raised.
Mm-hmm.
So it was the family home.
Mm-hmm.
She was just the matriarch. And so I spent a lot of time with my grandmother. And every single milestone or growing curve or difficult time, happy time, I can't remember a time where she wasn't a part of any of that. And she kept me close to her. And I often say, I was sharing this in another conversation recently with a friend, my grandmother was actually, and is actually, because she's still living, thank you, Lord, she's 94
Mm-hmm.
years young.
Oh,
But
praise
my
God.
oh yeah, my grandmother, I always call her my first hype man. The
Hmm.
definition of a hype man. You see a hype man on stage with a rapper,
Yeah.
but my grandmother was my first hype man.
Yeah. I
Because
love that.
honestly, oh gosh, yeah, there was nothing I couldn't do in her eyes. And it
Mm-hmm.
was that kind of support and encouragement and her kind of pushing me to the front of the stage, front of the church, front of it was
Mm-hmm.
that kind of encouragement that I feel like sort of girded me in a different way. I feel like I presented to the world in a different way. I mean, forget about what was happening in the background with not having a lot but I never knew I didn't have a lot because she
Mm-hmm.
just didn't know it because her love was just so full. It was everything that I needed. So that's why I said my grandmother first, just because she was often around. She was there as my mom was out kind of
Mm-hmm.
working and doing, being a single mom but it was my grandmother was the force. She was the common force, the consistency, the stability. She was that foundation for me. I just love her dearly. I love her so much. And even talking about her now, you can probably hear the joy in my spirit because,
Yeah.
she introduced me to Christ. My
Mm-hmm.
grandmother was a church mother. And so, we were in church, Sunday, Monday, Wednesday night Bible study, Friday night
Mm-hmm.
choir rehearsal. I mean, and I was the granddaughter who was just always kind of by her
With her.
side. Oh
Mm-hmm.
yeah. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
so beautiful. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
especially the analogy you give with her being your hype man. I think, we
Yeah.
think about, that hype man on stage,
Oh
like
yeah.
hyping. And, but I think that's a perfect description. And then, the way you describe her and in
Mm-hmm.
that home, it's like she was your anchor and that home
Oh
kind of
God, yeah.
symbolizes that anchoring, right? You said
Mm-hmm.
that was the family home and she's the matriarch, she's the anchor.
Sure.
She saw your potential and she
Gosh,
believed in
yeah.
it.
Even when
Wow.
I didn't, even when I didn't see it, right? Even when I didn't even see it, she did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that moms, like, being a mom and of course you're a mom, like we can look at our children and we see who they are, right?
Mm.
We see their potential. And I guess that is the challenge while they're getting to know who they are, is
Mm-hmm.
allowing them to go through that process, because you're like, I mean, you're a king. You can't be doing, that's not kingly. Like
Yeah.
you're a king, you're
Right.
a
Yeah.
queen,
Yeah.
but everyone has to go through that process. But yeah, but your grandmother, sounds like she just, through it all, through your process, she was holding you accountable to your divinity.
Mm-hmm.
Like she saw what was within you and she was hyping you, holding you accountable.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So you described some of these things that you pay forward, but are there things that in particular characteristics that you have adopted that, you incorporate into your own life and how you are with others?
So I think one thing that I learned early is that, my actually, so my name Luciana, actually the sub of that name is Luce, Luc is light bearer, light bringer.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned early that it's not my job to be here in this role, in this life. It's not my assignment to dim anybody else's light.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I want to do is, sort of be a bridge, a connector, shine some light, some hope, um, where it's otherwise, dark. And I think I got that from, again, my grandmother and from the women around me, the people around me, understanding that there are lessons to this thing, right? Mm-hmm. This thing called life. And we're all on this very unique journey and this very unique path, and it's uniquely ours. And so what I am setting out to do is to make sure that I am living a life that I can be proud of. And I hope to be able to represent something that turns that light on in others. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
I
think
love
that's
that.
how I would answer that question.
Yeah, to live a life that you can be proud of. I think that is really awesome. And one thing that comes to mind when you talk about that, just to live a life that you can be proud of, and the fact that we are on a journey, right? So there's things maybe that if I reflect on my own life, decisions, the way I went about things, how I moved, I've always tried to do my best. But along that way, there's imperfections. There's a
Yes.
stumble here. We might fall. We have to dust our knees off and get up.
Yes.
We make mistakes along the way. But the thing is, when you say a life that you can be proud of, it's how you recover from those.
That's what it is.
Right?
That's exactly what it is. I think that it's, and honestly, we all have things in our past that that I like to say, gosh, that wasn't my finest moment. Right. But thank God for redemption. Like, thank God that I can, I've got this chance to do it again. And I think you are represented with the lesson when you don't get it right the first time. So my goal is to make sure that I'm getting it right the first time and learning from the lesson so that it doesn't, represent itself to me. I just want to get it right. But I think that, no, we don't always get it right. We all have some things that weren't our finest moment, our finest hour. But I think we've got to learn from those things, and we have to pay it forward. And when we learn, we've got to share the message and share the learning. And I think that's more important than anything. But also, to piggyback on something you just said, it is the rebound, right? It's not what you went through. It's not so much that as it is, what you learned from it and how you bounced back. I think sometimes we stay too long in the fall.
Yeah.
Just too long in the fall. And I think a lot of it has to do with, what'd you do with it? How did you bounce back? And being in what's your resilience power like? Like, let's talk about the resilience. I think that's more important than the actual fall. Is what'd you do with it? What'd you learn, and how'd you bounce back from it? There's something to say about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I also love the fact that you acknowledge that if you don't learn what the lesson is intended to teach you, that you may have to revisit that lesson.
Yeah.
And so, and without disclosing, you don't have to tell me the exact lessons, but, but
I'd be happy to, but I think that's a longer conversation.
Yeah. But there's specific lessons that I know,
that you know about.
Yeah. That and for myself, like, that I'm able to, when it comes up, I'm able to acknowledge in that moment, this is
wasn't
something,
my finest hour.
Yeah. Or this is something that I'm still having to learn from. So let me
Yeah.
see how I can do it different this time.
Yes.
Because apparently the first,
It's back for a reason.
yeah, it's back for a reason. Yeah, I love that. That's
So
awesome.
what can I do differently? How can I, how do I look at this now, or what am I supposed to get from this?
That's exactly right.
I just think that there's something in it for all of us. Like, there's a reason for the assignment. There's a
Absolutely.
reason. And so, what is the assignment, and making sure that we get it, and we pass it on, and we grow and we learn from it. Because there's a reason, there's a divine reason for it, for all of us.
It's the spiritual evolution. That's what we're here to do, is evolve. So when you talk about, challenges that you may have had, what would you say has been one of the most challenging experiences thus far?
Ooh. I think there's been moments where I've had to, what I like to say, work my faith or activate my faith. And, I have a few, but I think one that would really, be beneficial and resonate with this audience is a time when I was carrying my youngest son, my third child, youngest son, and, had 2 successful pregnancies up until that point. Was really happy in my pregnancy journey. Actually, I love carrying. I love caring. I love the act of being pregnant. I say all the time, and my husband balls up his face. I'd have 4 or 5 more kids if the Lord allowed. But that's that's not my ministry today, Dr. Tucker. but I would, because I really just enjoyed the how I felt, just the feminine power of carrying life, and just the union with this man I really love and adore, and just so all of that. I don't want to romanticize it too much, because I can be a romanticizer.
But I agree with you. It is a very special time to be able to create life in concert with the maker, right? So, it's just like the 3 people got together. Well, 2 people and the divine got together.
It's just so magical.
And created a whole other person, with their own will and mission in life, right?
Yeah, but there was a time where that I had to really understand, how I was going to show up in a situation. And again, it was how am I going to activate? How am I going to work my faith in this moment? And I remember, I was, I think 4, maybe 3 or 4 months in, and I had gone to maybe 4. It had to be further along. I had gone into an ordinary ultrasound visit, and things were up until that point. There was, no issues, no concerns. And I had gone in on my lunch break. At that time, I had worked at the hospital that I was being seen and cared for. And so I had walked over on my lunch break just alone, and went on over and walked in for the appointment. And, that was a life-changing moment that I had to understand and have get real tight and have a real close conversation with the Lord, because I was my faith was really tested in that moment. But I had gone in, and during this session, the radio tech, or the lab assistant was looking at x-rays at my belly in real time, and there was a look that came across her face that I had never seen before during that kind of appointment. A look of distress, a look of fear, a look of just uncertainty. And so I go, "What's going on? What are you seeing?" And she immediately said, "I can't share the results. You have to talk to the doctor. They'll call you, later on." And I just remember walking out of that room in distress. I kind of fell to my knees in the hallway. Oh man, I'm getting emotional thinking about it.
Yeah. Those moments are real. They, everything can be going along just great, and then you get some news, right?
So the news was that something did. I later learned that there was something. My son's heart and the other organs seemed very enlarged, and there was, so after that, as you can probably understand, we ran a series of tests, and at one point I was even called in, my husband and I, to an appointment where they discussed with us options about moving forward with the child, and options and what we could expect to happen based on what they thought they had found. And so it was a tough pregnancy and a tough rest of the pregnancy. I had a wonderful physician who just one day said, listen, let me carry the worry. And I love her to this day. Dr. Leticia Spencer, she always will hold a safe place in my heart. And she carried all of that worry for me. And sure enough, things were fine. Baby was then later born, but nothing, no problems, nothing wrong at all. But there was a scare there that, had I not in that moment decided how I would show up during this test, that made the difference in how. And I know that, sometimes we don't have, sometimes when life kind of constrict, and we go through things, sometimes the prayer is, the only prayer that sometimes we can muster up is, stretch me, Lord, increase my faith. And that began to be the prayer. There are moments, I don't want to sit here like I'm always faith on full, because there are moments when we don't have an abundance of faith.
Well,
there are times when we just have enough faith. It is.
Yeah, we have to, strengthen it, and then sometimes it atrophies, and sometimes it gets built back up. And with that particular situation, I remember that situation because we were both pregnant together, and
you are God, Mom, because you also were just like, you, and how we bonded through that and over that, and the talks and the support, and to this day, I don't think that our relationship will ever be the same because of just how close we grew over that and through that. And
you're my sister. We're sisters now. I'm family now. You're not going to be able to ever get rid of me. But
you're also Jackson's godmom, and so But that I still don't want to. There's still something to say about having someone to offer, and actually just being able to see you too, watch you and how you've shown up in tough times in your life, and being able to have those examples of, again, that phenomenal woman. That's that perseverance piece that I talked about at the opening of this talk. Is it's that perseverance piece, and it's not about her perfection. It's about her imperfections, and it's her resiliency in those moments and how she shows up. And you have been that for me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. There's reciprocity there. It goes both ways, because I think that, during that time in particular, when you were pregnant with Jackson, and of course there's fear there. You have the initial excitement of, bringing in life and the miracle of it, and all that brings, and just the blessing. I think that it's just such a blessing that God could choose you to be this particular child's mother, like any child, but like, you chose me to be his mom. You thought that I had what it took to get him here. You knew that I would be faithful. You knew that I would be faithful enough.
And you knew that I had the capacity, Lord. Like, you knew my capacity, and you knew the area that you wanted to grow in me, so that I could then go and show and tell others. That's listen, I could preach right there all day.
But that's the true
blessing in that.
And it's him. It's Jackson specifically, that he chose you to bring him here, and you were the one who could give him what he needs to be who he needs to be in terms of what his life purpose is. That's a beautiful thing. And I think that when people are watching us go through challenges. The people are watching us go through adversity. People, they don't always understand the decisions that we make. You know, it's like you mentioned, you know, how you've watched me deal with certain adversities in my own life. Even through some of those things, people, they didn't understand, you know, why is she going through that? Why is she fighting through that? Why is she, you know, it's not necessarily for that person in that moment to understand what's happening.
And
But
often you don't.
You don't understand. And
often you
as I
don't.
was going through it and I began to understand for myself what it meant, what spiritual muscle I was working out, the beauty in it is that even those around me who didn't understand, later, now they have watched the evolution. And they, the very ones who didn't understand, are glad I did, because now they have the experience to draw from. And that's what you offer to other women who are faced with a decision like maybe what you were.
Yeah. And I often say that, you know, people see the glory, but they don't know the story. Right?
That's absolutely
They don't
true.
really know the behind the scenes. They don't know how many times I prayed. They don't know, you know, like you just said, what muscle, what spiritual muscle is being worked and stretched and yeah. So we all have a story. And that's why I think that's the point that we need to relate on as women and as people, as just human beings. We all have a story and a journey. And it's ours individually and it's ours to tell and own.
For sure. And, you know, you talk about, and thank you for sharing that. I think that's just really important that when we have those really vulnerable moments in our life, that you reach a place where you're able to share it, because there's always value in learning someone else's lesson. You know, there are so many lessons on earth and thank God we don't all have to experience each and every one of them. We can lean on each other and learn from one another's experiences. So thank you for sharing that one.
I agree.
Yeah.
Of course.
And then, you've talked about your childhood with your grandmother and how she was, you know, your hype man, how she, and you know, and actually, I'm just putting this together as I'm talking to you, but you know, you said that your grandmother, she just had faith in you. She was your hype man. She believed in you. She actually prepared you for the decision you made when you were in that room.
Oh yeah,
because you were believing for Jackson before he was even here, before you even knew him. You know, you loved him that much because you had been loved.
Oh my God, that is a wonderful connection. That's the connection. Oh my gosh, that just gave me chills. Yeah. Because it's that believing in the possibility, in the potential piece. Yeah. It's the same belief that she saw in me.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Whoa. And you know, so they say that we use our adulthood to nurture the child in us. Meaning basically that your childhood shapes the direction and shape that our adult lives take. You know, would you say that that's true for you in any way?
I would say yes. I think, you know, some of that is true. I think that I am definitely an example of how you start the race does not determine how you'll finish. I think that I've often been the underdog. You would count me out as the underdog. You would say I'm the underdog, but I often root for the underdog. And it's because I've been the underdog in my childhood. And so I often speak to that 12-year-old Chana, right? Like, you know, what would I want that 12-year-old Chana to know, think, believe, do, live? I speak to her often. And I think that is why I've chosen the women's empowerment and mentoring as my platform and as topics that are really near and dear to me, because there were so many things also that 12-year-old Chana didn't get. There were some things that I didn't get. And so I want to be that for others. I want to be able to hold the mirror up for others. I want people to, I want, you know, girls to understand that, you know, we can, you know, we can break some of these generational curses And some of us are doing it now. Some of us are, we don't, not all of us have an inheritance or a trust fund or guidebook or 2-parent homes but look at us now, we're talking about home ownership and doctorate degrees and successful marriages and hope for tomorrow. And I want to continue to talk about that. You can be an underdog. You can start slow. That does not determine, how this thing will land.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, and it doesn't determine how you start, doesn't determine how you will land. And in some ways, in a cosmic twist, it sometimes does determine how you will land. Like I feel like, the harder you have to work for something, the more invested you are, and the more you're able to, the more sustainable it is. Like, who was it I was talking to recently? And they were talking about a tree versus a mushroom. So like the tree has roots, right? It has roots. It's anchored. It's, it's strong. Its trunk is wide. It cannot be knocked over. It's going to weather a storm. And that tree has had to go through weathering. It's had to go through intense years of growth. And, it's gone through extremities in temperature, and it's been hot. It's been cold. It's been, all of these things. The mushroom springs up overnight. So the mushroom, you can just knock
and
it
what
down.
That's from.
Yeah, exactly, right? And so, and it can be knocked down. You just knock it down. But the tree, you can't just knock that tree down. So, that was a really, really great analogy that person shared with me, because I think it's relevant even here. Like when you're talking about, how you start doesn't determine how you'll finish, but it does help you develop those roots and really be anchored and be strong.
I see that. Yeah. I see that. I would agree with that. I think I just mean, I started off as the underdog, but I think that I'm doing okay.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. No, you started.
I think that you can hear enough no's and you can turn those. It's what you do with the no's.
Yeah.
And it's what you do with the inequities and we didn't have the same starting line, and my starting line was there and someone else's was there for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And you can make up the pace. You can make up the way. It's again, it goes back to the roots, the backbone, the foundation, what's in you, and the will.
Yeah.
And so, wow.
And what is your grandmother's name?
Olivera Anderson.
Olivera Anderson. Well, thank you to Olivera Anderson for just really investing in this legacy. Oh, wow. Olivera Anderson. Yeah, thank you. God bless her name. Okay, so, through all of this, you've developed friendships, and I'll say for you, for me, I call it, the board of directors. Your team of people where you're on my board, right? So you're on my board where I have a team of people where
and you're on mine.
Thank you, and it's an honorable group of people that you can go to when you really need to bounce off ideas, or you're really, wanting to check in, whether it's a professional decision, whether it's a decision about how you're navigating certain situations, any important decision in your life, you have this team. Do you, how important is that to you in terms of friendship and how you navigate?
Gosh, I think it's very important. You call it your board of directors, and I call it my tribe. And I often say, find your tribe and love them hard. I do think that, each of us has, a friend. I've got one friend who I talk finances with. I've got a friend who I talk fashion with. I've got a friend I talk spirituality with. A friend I talk, all dreams. There's just, everybody's got their expertise, and I trust, and I've got friends selected them, and so those relationships mean the world to me, because I think that we often have to check in with ourselves, and we have to have people to check us too. We need to have folks
Absolutely.
that rally us and folks that say, "Okay, sis, now what's going on? Because I saw that post, or I haven't
Right.
heard from you,
Uh-huh.
or you did what, or and so
Uh-huh.
I think I think that that's what's also helped to keep me grounded and focused and balanced, and very important to have. It's what I try to create. It's a community of women, and supporting one another and validating one another, because we can all win. There's enough for all of us. And so I'm a what they call a girl's girl. I root for us. I am I don't find value in hating on others or taking from others. That's not, I don't get anything from that. I believe that we all have our own journeys and assignments, and there's enough for us. And so, I find value in those relationships, and I think that we have to nurture them too.
Mm-hmm.
They're only as good as we nurture them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like with anything that you want to grow. You've got to plant the seed. You've got to water it. You've got to, you have to see to it, and I think friendships are the same. They're the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I like what you said, that there's enough for all of us. There's something I like to say, stop cultivating the lie that in order to win, others have to lose. I don't believe that
I love
you're
that.
losing. Like, even in situations where you go for, and I've just talked about this. You go for a job interview, for example, and you're not chosen for the job, right? And you feel that you've lost. You feel that the other person won the position, but in reality, you no, you've been free to accept what your blessing is, right? So that job or that
Yep.
position that's really for you, the one that's really a match that you can't even, that God has for you, that is greater than what you even
It's
thought for
sitting and
yourself.
waiting.
That's right. And if you were tied up with this other thing, you wouldn't have the opportunity to do it. There's enough for
You wouldn't
everybody.
be
There's a
available.
position for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a shortage.
Yeah.
So you just have to find yours.
It's that abundance mentality, just having that abundance mentality,
Mm-hmm.
Abundance, and seeing through the eyes of abundance,
Of
and not
having enough.
lack.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, versus lack, right? Like,
Yeah.
versus lack. Like, it's just, it's how we think. It's what we
Mm-hmm.
believe.
Mm-hmm. It's like when you go to the grocery store hungry versus when you go to the grocery store full. It's
And
the
how your
same kind of thing.
decisions are exactly like, imagine you're buying decisions and you're in there starving.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I gotta get everything. I gotta what I can do.
Yeah.
I just gotta take it because I'm hungry. I need all of this stuff.
I mean, you're putting all kinds of stuff in your basket.
Right.
And it's like, what you doing with that salami? Like, you don't even eat pork. Like, what are you doing with that? Like,
it looked good. It looked.
Why do you have beef jerky in your cart? You don't even eat meat, sis.
Right.
That's hilarious.
Oh gosh, yeah. Oh, I've just enjoyed talking to you so much today.
Same here.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I have one final question for you, and it is one I've asked since we've been in this very unique stretch of time, and that is, what do you think COVID-19 is teaching us? It's evolved so much from, I started asking this when we first had to sit down, and then, civil unrest, and, we're still dealing with that. Justice for Breonna Taylor. We are still trying to get there. Justice for Breonna Taylor.
Yes.
But what do you think overall it's teaching us? Because now we're moving into one of the most controversial elections. I mean, we thought that the election, when we had President Obama, into the White House, we thought that
Mm-hmm,
initial
mm-hmm.
election was the most controversial, but it turns out this is turning into one of the most controversial time periods just based on all that's happening
What's
with the
going on in
current.
the world?
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm going
Yeah.
to give you the mic so you can answer that question. What do you
Yeah.
think it's teaching us?
Pass me the mic so I can float. No, I'm just kidding. No, no, I actually, and I will say this. But remember, this is the lens that I often
Mm-hmm.
that I've had to train myself to look.
Sure.
And I know folks can say she's always looking through rosy glasses. It's how you see things. I talk about um, beliefs, behaviors, and results, and what you believe really impacts your behaviors, and you change that behavior, and then your result is different. And so I speak from that. I talk and I kind of live my life with that kind of position statement in mind. But I think some people see, COVID-19 for what it's taken away, what it's stopped, what's halted, where we are, I actually choose to see it as this kind of divine reset and redirection. I think that the Lord is saying, look, I'm putting some things on pause so that you can see what I've assigned you to be doing here anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Because we have now been forced to say, we've got an opportunity now to slow down, to take a second look at our health, our surroundings, things we thought we were in control of, we're not in control.
Yeah.
And I think this time offers us a chance to do things differently.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us started off the year thinking 2020 was the year we had everything we wanted. I'm going to get everything. 2020 is going to be lit. 2020. But what if 2020 is the year that teaches us to appreciate the things we already have?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's something to think about. And so I think I see it as a way to kind of reset ourselves and listen for a change.
Mm-hmm. I love what you're saying. I do. And the reason is because, in another interview, when I asked this question, one of the guests, I think it was from What Soul Sisters Say, Keisha Vega, she said, with every situation, there's an upside and a downside. And you're choosing to focus on the upside. And I think that's amazing because even with Mr. George Floyd, with how he was sacrificed, yeah, it's his life, people counted him out. People counted Mr. Floyd out, and look how much impact he's had. Look how
the movement
he changed the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he started a movement, a global recognition for a need for change, and
of course,
that's an upside of that. It's a terrible downside because we lost him, but the upside, and I hate to say it this way, but it's the positive thing that has resulted from his life is that we have global change, global recognition for change, and we can move forward.
I mean, helping to igniting new conversations, right? On topics that just were kind of that lie dormant, and so it's that reset piece that I was talking about.
Absolutely, yeah, I totally agree with you.
It's a reset, redirection, igniting conversations. Creating dialogue. Now, how we do it, how long it goes, what we do with it is ours to do and think about. But it's the reset. It's the opening of the conversations and the dialogue. Yeah. There's value there.
Absolutely. Yeah. Rest in peace, Mr. Floyd. Yeah. So I've so enjoyed this time and space with you. And like you said, you choose to focus on the positivity. And I know that you have an inspirational blog that you maintain. And you also have an Instagram handle where you provide inspirational quotes. And where can people find you? I will also leave a link to to your blog and your Instagram
Yeah.
in the show notes.
Thank you. Thank you so much again for having me and for just allowing me to have a voice, and just honestly, the work they're doing to just kind of create space for women, phenomenal women all over the world from various industries and out and income levels and voices. And I just, what you're doing is just in and of itself is necessary. It's relevant. It's timely. And keep going, sis. Like, I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank
But
you.
of
Thank you.
course. So my Instagram is Dr. Chana Luciana. And then I do have the blog, and that is just at chanaluciana.com.
Okay, awesome. I will leave a link to those in the show notes so that my listeners know where to find you and hear more inspiration from you. You have so much to offer. I read your quotes all the time, daily when you post them. They're just that extra little boost I need sometimes to get me through the day or shift my perspective on life. So
thank you so much,
I
and pray for
appreciate
that
it.
book. Pray for that book, that journal that's going to be coming after. With those quotes
Oh, absolutely.
the prayer journal and the daily journal. That's the goal. And so just pray for me on that manifests.
Yeah, just keep going. Just keep going every day. You're getting closer and closer. So thank you.
Okay.
Yes, have a phenomenal Wednesday. I believe that every woman gives the universe with her own strengths and unique characteristics. Simply because she is born, the universe benefits. Every woman is growing, learning, and evolving. Only positive seeds are sown here, no matter how flawed the soil.
Phenomenal.
Tune in Wednesday. Phenomenal Woman Wednesday podcast can be found on iTunes, SoundCloud, and YouTube. You may also visit our website at www.pwwr365.com. Follow us on Instagram at pwwr365. Please be certain to rate, comment, and most importantly, subscribe. Take care.